I'll be up here sweating like a pig pretty quick with all this water. Look, it's as hard on me as it is on you. Are you ready to go? Okay. Now we'll get back to what I'm going to prove. Now, when I'm saying, I'm being careful with my words. And it's amazing how people afterwards say, you said this, and you said this, and you said this, when you very carefully did not say that. You see, people hear what they want to hear. It's an amazing thing when you're talking to a group of people, how you'll have 50 people hear 50 different things when you said one thing. And everyone will swear you said it. And it's amazing afterwards to find out, talking to people, all the things that I said that I never knew before. Which they will come up with. Because we hear, by the way, each of us from our backgrounds. We hear from our beliefs and our position. It is from our point of observation. A Christian hears one thing. A non-Christian hears another. An evolutionist hears one thing. A creationist hears another. You hear from your viewpoint. Your viewpoint and different doctrines will tune your ears in a certain direction or another direction and determine your reaction to many things. So, anyway, I'm going to prove something regardless of your position, and be careful what I'm going to prove. I am not going to prove that creation is true. It'll look like it. That's why I'm saying I'm not doing it. Logically, I cannot do it. That is, if I had any scholastic integrity. What I am about to do is prove one thing, that evolution is not scientific nor logical. All right? I did not prove it's wrong. I proved it is one, not science. If it is true, it is not a scientific fact. It is a faith that happened to be true. I don't believe it's true. But it is certainly not science. And it does not fit logic. It is logically, manifestly, or it is the most illogical conclusion one can come to. Because it's manifest within its own statement. Now, logic is something that we have forgotten about. There are some rules of logic. In order for me to come up with a logical proof, once I've come up with a logical proof, is it true? Is it true? No. Why? Somebody's taking a course in logic. I can tell that. Somebody's cheated. I don't have like those bright boys around. They always upset you. You got to really think then. You got to get it straight. Why is it not true? Does logic establish truth? What does it establish? Logic, consistency. My conclusion can be no better than my original assumptions. All right? Well, let's put it this way. If my assumption is true and my logic is false, what is my conclusion? True or false? Pardon? Oh no. If my assumption is true and my logic is false, what is my conclusion? It can't be determined. Most likely false, but I can't prove it to be false because by faulty logic I could have come up with the right conclusion. Now, what if my assumption is false and my logic is correct? What is my conclusion? I've proven it false. It must be false. If my assumption is false and my logic is correct. If my assumption is false and my logic is false, what is my conclusion? Not determinable. With a false assumption and faulty logic, I could have accidentally come up with the right answer. All right? I can't say for sure that the conclusion is false. Good chances of it, but I can't say it for absolute certainty. If my assumption is true and my logic is correct, what is my conclusion? True. Notice, my conclusion cannot be truer than my assumption. Now, when we talk to a person who uses logic on us, and watch this, you kids in school, because this hits you all the time, it hits you adults too, but the kids get a bigger avalanche of this. What the teachers do to you is this. They start out by assuming something, and then by a logical process, prove a crazy conclusion to be true. Now, if you let me, I remember over at Wayne University, you always had these older fellows sitting around the Marxists in the student center, student union. And you go over to that student union, and they'd sit down, and there'd be this one of these all-wise fellows with all of the little kiddies sitting around listening to the great sage, you know. And this sage would sit there, and he'd get a new one in the bunch. He'd say, well, now, for the sake of argument, let us assume such and such. You sit there, a little neophyte freshman, listening to the great brain of brains and the greatest intellect that ever was, because all the weirdos around there tell you that he has a brain out of this world. And so you sit there with adoration, and he says, well, for the sake of just for fun of passing some time, let us assume such and such. Okay, you got nothing to do. All right, fine, assume it. Well, if that's true, then this is true. Well, yeah, and this true, that true. Yeah, and this true, that true. Yeah, and this true, and that true. Yeah, and that true, and that true. And all of a sudden, whammo, therefore, and he comes up that black as white. Man, what a brain. And he bounces your brain like that every day for a few weeks. That's for the sake of discussion. Assume. You say, okay. And he takes you down another one of these trails. Boy, his logic, how perfect his logic. Oh, he's practiced that out. He's got it down to a T. He won't slip up in the logic. Why? Once you grant him an assumption, freezy, he can come up with anything. You let me make the first assumption. Don't challenge my assumption. And I can prove anything you want by logic. The question is not the logic. The question is the original assumption true? If it be not true, neither is that conclusion. Where they pull it on you is by that first one. Well, let us say, you're flipping away. Yeah, okay, you buy that. Say for the fun of it. And then he bounces around, and your concentration's on his logic, isn't it? You forgot about that original assumption back there. And once he has picked the assumption, he's already picked the conclusion. Okay? It's the most beautiful way to intellectually brainwash anybody. You can bomb their brain out on anything you want. And that's what these schools do a masterful job of doing. Now, if you are going to use honest logic, the first thing to do before you can come up with a logical proof is you must have a closed system. That is, I must have gone through all of the possible conclusions. If there is a possible conclusion that has been omitted from the discussion, nothing has been proven in the conclusion. All right? We must have a closed system. I'm going to make a closed system on creation. I'm going to say right now that there are only 4 possible answers for the phenomenon observed. If you're going to disagree with my logic, you must come up with a 5th. If you can't come up with a 5th, you must accept my 4. Now that's a little different than asking you to take a freezy, right? A couple of years ago I was out in Washington, and here in the middle of a day I had a young man who really flipped, one of these guys who he just was as antagonistic as you could get. And it's amazing, in the middle of the afternoon he came to my defense against another guy. Something happened in the early part of the afternoon, I don't know. But anyway, in the morning, at lunch, he says, you cannot say that you have a closed system ever. And I said, what do you mean I can't say I have a closed system? He says, that's impossible. One of these guys has been to college for a year and a half where they know everything. A sophomore. This is called the sophomore syndrome. They all get affected by the disease. You hope they could overcome it within a few years. Anyway, he had a bad case of the sophomore syndrome. And I said, well, now let's put it this way. Would you grant me this, that I am either here or not here? No. If you say that the 2 possibilities I've given you, that I am here or I'm not here, are not all, give me a 3rd. I can't. If you can't give me a 3rd, you must accept the 2 I've given you. I won't. Well, once you get to this point, you got what I call a cotton candy mind. Like cotton candy, you bite in, there's nothing there. There is no way to logically talk to a person who cannot possibly accept the most simple logic. You see, there's no way. A person like that, you just walk away from. There's no way to go any further. He says, there's got to be a myriad of possibilities. I said, how many? Millions of possibilities. Okay, millions? Give me 3. I don't want a million, just give me a 3rd. I've given you 2. Out of the millions, give me 1 more. Well, I can't. You can't, and you say there are millions? Now, Buster, you got to decide. If there are millions, give me 1 more. I only want one out of a million. I can't buy it. You can't have right and wrong. You can't have absolutes. You can't go and say there's only two. You can't know whether there's two. I sure do. I'm either here or not here, and I know that's true. Now, you may say I'm not here. That's all right. Or you may say I am here, but you have no other choices. I can't buy it. I can't buy it. It freaked his brain. That just blew him right out. He's sitting there just stunned. Shaking. What happens? You got an absolute. What happens to all things are relative? Well, that's an interesting statement. If all things are relative, then that statement's absolute. If it's not absolute, then you got to say most things are relative. Well, if most things are relative, those things that aren't relative must be absolute. Hey, you got some little problems. By the way, St. Thomas Aquinas had destroyed this one over a millennium ago. Right? Now, if all things can't be relative, and most things can't be relative and have no absolutes, then you must say there is an absolutes. The one thing logic says is that there has to be absolutes. If there are absolutes, where are they? Oh, you get these people in a box in a few minutes, they don't know which way to go. They really freak their brain. Well, so I'm going to give you four. And like that little boy with the cotton candy mind, if you won't buy that there are only four, you got to come up with five or it's going to blow your brain right out of here right now. Okay? One. The material of the universe that we see now, that is, that all the things that we see, either were always here. Eternality of matter. That is, the matter of the universe is composed of is eternal. It may have been in gases, it may have evolved and gone through all the cycles that you want to come up where it is. But whatever everything is made of has always been in existence is what the first possibility is. The eternality of matter. That the stuff in which everything is made of has always been here. Okay? That's possibility one, isn't it? What is possibility two? That it has not always been here, but it got here by a natural process. Or we'll call this natural generation. Now, what do we mean by natural generation? Natural generation means in nature observable processes going on. Okay? These are what we call, they would like to call scientific phenomenon, but really natural process, natural generation. By the way, what's another name for this? Evolution. Okay, but I'm going to give you the proper name, which is natural generation. Now, the third possibility is what? I'll change the name just slightly. Supranatural generation. What does supra mean? A little different than super. Supra means not natural. An unnatural generation. That is, it is not observable. It is not observed. It can't be observed. All right? It's above observation. Supranatural generation. What is the fourth possibility? No generation. By the way, this is the one that's taught in the university today. Or what they call this, imaginary construction. That the universe isn't even here. You only dream in it. Things only exist that you exist in your mind. Existentialism, which is a religion that is being propagated on our college campuses. Unless there is a mind to observe it, an eye to see it, it doesn't exist. There is no sound when a tree falls in the forest unless there is an ear to hear it. Therefore, nothing exists without a mind to perceive it. Therefore, if you don't observe it, then it didn't happen to you or for you. It didn't exist. You talk to people with this philosophy, and this is a philosophy taught today. It's the philosophy of Hume. It's a philosophy of the most of the so-called modern philosophers, but it's a very ancient philosophy. It's not nothing new. But with this goes something this way. You see, when I face something that is unpleasant, the easy way to handle it is just wipe it out of your mind. All right? For an example, you'll get in an argument with one of these harebrains, and then what they do, if you start winning by logic, they say, you don't exist, man. You don't exist. They just wiped you out. They don't have to argue with you. They don't have to prove. They don't have to use any logic. They just turn you off. That's what they mean. You turn me off. They just said, we wiped you out, boy. We just clicked you off. We don't have to come to grips with your logic. We don't have to answer what you're saying. We don't have to think. If we don't like what you're saying, click. That's why it's so hard to talk to these people coming out of these brain laundries. Because they have the immediate duck out mechanism. It's called switch off. They don't have to come down to grips with reality because they denied reality. Now, I'm going to define reality. You ready? Reality. That which you must cope with and that which you cannot alter. Death is reality. You're going to cope with it and you can't alter it. All right? Reality. That which you must cope with and that which you cannot alter. God is reality. Why? You're going to cope with him and you can't change him. Now people are trying. There's a million, all sorts of fads, sex and everything else trying to do it, but they're not going to do it. He changes not. He endure it forever. Not one jot nor one tittle. His word shall not pass away. That's what God says. And we've got people all over trying to do it, right? They say God is not real. He's amendable. All right? But reality is not, oh, it's really this and really that. No, reality is that which you cannot duck. All right? You must cope with. You must face. And you cannot change. Now, to the cotton candy brain down here, he cannot cope with reality. Why? Because to cope with the reality of this is the reason why he can't follow the logic, why he turns you off. If he follows the logic, he cannot accept his philosophy. For an example, mister, you don't know whether you're here or not? No. You're only here if you imagine it, right? If you don't imagine it being here for a minute, then you're not here for a minute. Is that right? Yeah. What happens if you quit imagining the chair you're sitting on right now? You're going to fall down. If you're not imagining the floor, you got a long ways to go, maybe all the way to hell. Now you got some troubles, mister, because you got to imagine the clothes on you. You're going to be naked. What are you imagining this minute right now, mister? Are you living in an imagination? That's why all these books like Tolkien and so on, all of these fantasies. We are raising our kids on fantasy, in a fantasy world. They've done studies on the number of hours that kids watch television and their ability to cope with reality. After so-called 4 or 5 hours a day on television, a child cannot cope with a real thing. He cannot mentally, emotionally cope with it. I got to put in something here. It's a little out of line. I was a couple of years ago down at the Wilds camp. I had a teenage camp down there. About 15 or 20 teenagers going with me down to the Fourth Falls. Have anybody here been there, the Wilds camp? Well, that's a real climb. I mean, it's a straight down, and it's a straight up, and it's an endurance test. Well, anyway, we climbed down to this most fabulous waterfalls, the most gorgeous setting you've ever seen. These huge rocks, 450 feet of falls falling through the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we're sitting there in this gorgeous pool there swimming, and a huge rock there. And I said to the kids, I said, they went, oh, how beautiful. It's considered the most beautiful waterfalls in the eastern United States. How gorgeous. And I said, yes, we just got it finished a couple of months ago and just turned it on. It's operating pretty well. Oh, they're buying it, see? Yeah, and we just got the construction crews out and so forth, and did a pretty good job, They're so used to TV and Disney World that everything is man-made, isn't it? So finally, one of the girls asked an intelligent question. Where does all the water come from? I said, oh, they flush all the toilets in the camp up when we come down. That's what the counselors are doing. Well, you ask a stupid question, you get an answer. That's all it's doing. But to them, they're living in an unreal world. Everything's a thing of TV today. It's a thing of amusement parks. It's all, religion and church is all amusement and games and fun and games. This is what things have become to us. We have not faced, as the farmer did 100 years ago, stark reality. They had a real God, a real religion, a real world, and understood real things. The kids grew up in a real world with real problems, real economic problems that they understood when they were 5 years old because they were at the cabin door. They weren't living in this mystical, etherical, make up your own philosophy, game, and thought world. They weren't living in this cotton candy existence. Now, one of the things I always do with these guys is, now look, if I stick you with a hat pin you weren't imagining, you shouldn't jump, should you? Now, if you jump, Buster, you're wrong. Next. For me to imagine me being here, imagining that I am here, is insanity. For if I don't know whether I'm here or not, how could I be here knowing that I don't know whether I'm here or not? Now, the most simple rudimentary logic states this. What is insanity? The inability to cope with reality. Let me define insanity. The inability to cope with reality. Any person who accepts this possibility is insane. Oh, it doesn't mean he's going to assault anybody or bounce off any wall, but he's insane. He's incapable of coping with reality. By the way, rock music does the same thing, doesn't it? It creates temporary and later permanent insanity. What do I mean? They turn off. What do you mean when they turn off? They have no longer control of themselves. That is insanity. They're insane. No question about it. We have loony bins for thousands of years filled with those kind of people. What do they want to do? They want to turn on? No, they're turning off. They're turning off reality to live in an unworld state. This is, medically speaking and legally speaking, a condition of insanity. I'm not buying that one. By the way, I didn't do I haven't presented this properly. Let me go back here. I said I have to have a closed system. If I haven't got it, you've got to come up with a fifth one. The material the universe is composed of has always been here. It got here out of nothing by an observable process. It got here out of nothing by a non-observable process, or it never got here at all. Okay? Can you come up with 5? That's impossible. There is no possibility of a 5th. Therefore, I have a closed system. Therefore, I can use my logic, and I can come up with a logical proof. All right? A legitimate logical proof. Let's go back and look at number 2. Natural generation. Natural generation says that the process by which everything was created out of nothing is going on today. In the entire universe, no scientist or no priest of the evolutionary religion has ever seen a single atom come into existence. Second, we have no theory how an atom can come into existence out of nothing. 4, we have never seen one in existence leave existence. 4, we have no theory how one in existence, anything could become nothing. Now, notice, natural generation requires nothing becoming something. Yet in the entire observation, in nature, in space, in the laboratory, and even in theory, we have not got one, not a single example of a single atom, electron or proton, or neutron coming out of nothing or becoming nothing. Or we can change something to something else. But we had to have something to change to something else. But notice what number 2 requires. Nothing becoming something. Now, if nobody has ever observed, never been able to, and has no theory of how nothing can become something, Then number 2 is a logical absurdity. All right? Number 3. Well, let's take, at this point, a look at what is called the law of thermodynamics. All scientific thought is based upon the law of thermodynamics. You won't get any more out of it. You think so? Okay. You're going to have to work a miracle. Pray. Anyway, it's just a little sample of what hell is like. Okay. And if you get this law cemented down in your mind, you'll be able to handle any scientist in any argument or any evolutionist. You'll handle them beautifully. What is the first law of thermodynamics? Pardon? Matter cannot be created or destroyed. No matter is created. It's called the conservation of matter. That is, what it says is that the quantity of the universe is constant. This is the very first law of thermodynamics, and this is the basic law upon which all science is based. Without this law, science cannot exist. Why? If something is coming out of nothing, and nothing is something is becoming nothing, then how do I measure what I have done in the test tube? If I put in A and B, and some A's become nothing, and B's come from nothing into something, how do I know what happened in there happened by what I put into the test tube? My first assumption is that what I put in the test tube is what's in there. Now, unless that is true, science is impossible. All right? That is the constancy of matter. Called that no matter is being created or destroyed. Changed form, yes, to energy, to matter, to gases, and changed and dissipated, and all this sort of stuff. Lots of things going on with the stuff, but the quantity of it is constant. Now, what does the second possibility say? That the quantity is constantly increasing. Isn't that what 2 says? That out of nothing, something is in the process of happening. Natural generation is happening now. Universalitarianism. Okay? Now, it would behoove a scientist to come up with a single observation, wouldn't you think? In fact, he should observe trillions of billions of zillions of these going on every second, shouldn't he? All over the world. Yet no one yet has ever came up with one single itty-bitty observation of creation. Now, what it does is make the possibility of such a theory rather remote. It should be everywhere, yet we observe it nowhere. And if we observe it nowhere, and science is based on observation, what must the conclusion of a scientist be? That natural generation by scientific observation is an absolute absurdity. No, that's their own law. See, we got them. What's the second law of thermodynamics? No. Entropy, or what he's saying here, all decay is universal. The universality of decay, or entropy, is increasing. What do you mean by entropy? That is that energy is always being dissipated into less usable form, and it is never being collected and gathered back again. The sun is burning up 14 million tons per minute and being radiated out into space, but the energy is not coming from space back to the sun. The sun is in the process of decay. Uranium is breaking down and giving off radiation, but we don't find radiation going into uranium and creating uranium. The process is always a process of decay. Everyone in this room, every cell in your body is in the process of decay. Not generation, but degeneration at this moment. That's why you get old, and that's why the eyes get weaker, and you walk slower. And finally, things don't pump at all, and you go in a box, and you decay even faster. But the fact is that everything in this universe that we observe is running down. that all radioactive materials are running down, that the mountains are wearing down, that everything is in the process of decay, that decay is the universal observable phenomenon of our universe, and science is based on a process of measuring decay rates. Isn't that how they try to age the world? By measuring the decay process? Whether it be the decay of mountains or decay of caves or decay of uranium or potassium argon, right? Regardless of what it is, they measure by decay yet believe in evolution, which is a process of generation, when what they're measuring is degeneration, isn't it? Now, if all processes are in the process of decay and we only observe degeneration, in which science is all it is an observation of degeneration, isn't it? You take any field of science and what are we measuring? The process of degeneration, isn't it? Now, if there's a process of degeneration, you'll have to have something generated to degenerate. If no generation is going on today, and these things have been degenerating forever, eternality, number one, right? Then what are we saying? All things have totally degenerated by now. Now maybe that hasn't hit you yet. Let's back up and slug it at you again. If the sun is burning out, and no matter how slow it is burning out, and it's been burning out forever, then it's already burned out by now. Any process going on forever has finished going on. Forever is a long time. Eternality means it's happened. It's all past. The whole universe is 498 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Kelvin. Is it? Not today it isn't. We have 598 degrees of heat at least in this room right now. It means that all of the organisms have totally degenerated. Are you better than your ancestors evolving? Oh no. Is man smarter today than Plato? Were our ancestors animals inferior? No, they're vastly superior to us, because the species are degenerating also, which is another subject I could get into, which man doesn't like to believe, because man is an egotist, right? He wants to make himself God, and he's got to believe in himself evolving and spiraling upwards to a utopia, to a better age and a better world. But the fact is that our whole, by the way, the Bible is a statement of the opposite process, isn't it? Now notice two things. One, well, I just knocked the eternality of matter right out. The second law of thermodynamics just whopped that thing all the way. Seeing all uranium has not changed the lead yet, that means uranium couldn't have been here forever, changing the lead. If it hasn't been here forever, changing the lead, how did it get here and when? We don't see any coming into existence now. And forever it's been going out of existence, it's all gone now. But it's not all gone now, so it couldn't have been going out of existence forever. So it must have started some definite time ago. When? Well, scientifically we don't know. All we know is two things. One, it has not been going on forever. Okay? And two, what has gone on in the past is not observable in the present. Those are the two things we know are true. Now, there is only one book in the world that tells us or claims to know with an observer present. That is, this book, written by a person who claims to have been there. For nothing was made without him that was made. He says that he generated it. How? By divine will. He spoke and it was so. You don't like it? Too bad. You come up with another one. You don't like that one, you got some trouble. It's the only one you got. Come up with another way. No other way is possible. Well, you say that seems impossible to me. Okay, then you've got no possible way, so therefore it's not here. Now, second, we have here. is in this same book a statement of when the degeneration started. We know generation had to take place, and a description of that generation. Then we have a statement of when degeneration started. Death entered the world, decay. And the world which was then perfect, with knowing no degeneration, was changed, the whole universe, into a degenerating universe. What do we observe today? A degenerating universe. Exactly what the Bible says is so. Second, we know at one time it had to be generating. That's what the Bible said. And at some time it had to change from a generating to a degenerating system. The Bible claims it did. Now, the Bible position is the only logical position. Have I proven it to be true? No, I've only proven it to be logical. And that all other systems are illogical. When you still get done, you still have to take it on faith. Now notice, if the Bible is wrong in the book of Genesis, if it wasn't, the world wasn't created in days, not ages, eons, or anything else, how can I trust it anywhere else? Next, there is no observable phenomenon in this universe that I know of that contradicts Scripture in its timing. There is nothing that we have that will give us an age, indicate an age of this world possible, even by uniformitarian methods, of over 15,000 years. Notice I said 15,000 years. Now why do I say 15,000? We have one dating process that has a little merit, and only one dating process with any merit to it at all. Radiological. Anybody know what that is? Carbon-14. Why? It's the only thing that we have a reason to believe that we know how it got there. That is, carbon-14 is created by the sun, and it is breathed in and ingested by, as it falls out of the atmosphere, by all living matter. When the matter ceases living, it ceases ingesting the stuff. Therefore, and it is a process of decay rate of somewhere around 5,000 years, a little under 5,000 years. Therefore, you can measure the amount of carbon-14 in any material that was once living, because you know the carbon-14 got in there while it was living. That is something observable, and we have a reasonable right to make an assumption there. By measuring the amount now, you can calculate back and come up with a rough date. I say rough. Why rough? Several reasons. One, you must assume the amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere at the time it was alive. Second, we know that creatures take in different quantities of carbon-14 with a very great variation. All right? They do not take in, for some reason, the same amount. Depends on what they're eating and so forth, and how much rainfall and other things that take place. There's a great variation. Three, there's a very great reason to assume or to believe that the amount of carbon-14 in the past was much less than the present. But anyway, you do have something, you know how it got there, and it's the only thing you do know how it got there, okay? Now, what is the problem with carbon-14? Very simple. We have no instruments that can measure carbon-14 over 15,000 years old. Because when we're talking about 3 half-lives, you're talking about parts per trillion, which is not measurable by any instruments known to man. Okay? When Leakey dates men 1.5 million years old by carbon-14, he is a known outright liar, and he knows he's lying. And every person who teaches such a thing is a bull-faced, knowledgeable liar. Because no one can claim a date by carbon-14 testing of over 15,000 years. Now, carbon-14 is a little sloppy because we've got wood 10 years old, which give 9,000-year datings. We've got oil to give a 500-year dating. We've got very sloppy dating, but at least you got some dating if you like that kind of sloppiness. But 15,000 years would be the outside limit of any dating by carbon-14. And yet we have these bold-faced liars walking around tagging millions of years onto things by carbon-14, knowing, full knowledge, that they are the devil's priest. They are the children of the father of lies. They are without excuse. All right? Hope I made my point. Up at Ohio State, the professor questioned me on that, and I said, you check with your Department of Physics, and he came back and says, you're right. 3 half-lives is 15,000 years, and they can't measure beyond it. And I said, what have their textbooks got in it? They've got dates of much greater periods, don't they? Yeah. Then they are liars, aren't they? Now, question? Okay. That's the first thing he checked me out on. And he was in the Department of Biology. And I said, you check with your nuclear physics department, and check me out. Impossible. Can't be done. Okay. The problem is this. This is the only possible answer. Now, have I proven it? By logic, yes. In fact, no. I wasn't there. All right? Now, I'll just run off just a few other little proofs for your own edification, to the observations I make. I'm sitting there, just my little old num-num self, not knowing much, and this is not digging down in any deep information, but just, sitting there noodling away, and I come up with a few little things like this. Why is coal in veins on mountainsides? Why isn't it all over the world if the trees just fell down over millions of years and made all of our coal? Second, what happens to a tree when it falls down? Does it become coal? Or does it decay and blow away? How come this coal is 50 feet deep in places, solid wood, with no dirt in it? Hey, that takes an awful lot. Now, if you've got wood for 50 feet, how do trees grow through wood at 50 feet? Next, how did the dirt get all on top of those trees? Of a few thousand feet, or hundreds of feet. Why didn't those trees rot and blow away while the dirt was slowly getting there at 1 inch per 1,000 years? We've got trees standing 80 feet tall, petrified trees over in London in a lime bed. That is, in limestone. Now that stone was supposed to be laid 1 inch per 1,000 years. That tree stood there for 80 feet worth. Now 80 feet times 12, because there's 12 inches in the foot, right? Something like that. Is 820, what do you come up with, 960, about 1,000 years, 1,000 inches, times 1,000, which is 1,000,000 years. Now that tree stood there for 1,000,000 years and didn't rot, because it's in perfect condition. Now, how many trees do you know that last 1,000,000 years? Sticking out in the open. Being buried. Here's a hippopotamus. He flops over and he gets buried at 1 inch per 1,000 years and becomes a fossil. He's 4 feet thick. That's 48,000 years he never decayed. Now, most hippopotamuses don't last that long without refrigeration. Now, you got some real problems because we have these fossils all over the world in perfect condition. By the way, let's look at some others. When a creature dies in this world, you go out here in a lake. You do have a lake around here someplace. And imagine there might be a fish in there. When a fish has his heart attack, rolls over, he goes down to the bottom, gets buried up, and becomes a fossil, doesn't he? Isn't that what we're told? What happens to a fish when he dies? Pardon? Oh, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. What? What does he do? Oh, no, he comes to the top about 3 days later, if he's still around. Generally, he doesn't come to the top. Why? You can answer while he flips the tape.